latest warning from the CEO of the nation's largest automaker, General Motors, about the impact of the tariffs on the car industry.
The federal government is playing hardball after two automakers dropped some Canadian car production.
In Canada's auto sector, General Motors is dropping electric van production at its plant near London, Ontario.
General Motors saying today it is ending production of its BrightDrop electric delivery van in Ingersoll, Ontario.
Something unusual is happening in Ontario, a quiet transformation reshaping Canada's electric future. What began as a bold leap into cleaner technology has taken an unexpected turn, revealing not weakness, but surprising strength. The BrightDrop shutdown. Not long ago, a billion-dollar investment turned the small town of Ingersoll into a symbol of hope. The GM plant was meant to lead Canada's charge into electric vehicle manufacturing, with politicians celebrating it as the dawn of a new economic chapter. But when GM halted production of its BrightDrop electric vans, leaving hundreds of workers in limbo, many expected the familiar story of industrial collapse. Instead, something different happened. Across Ontario, suppliers, unions, and local governments responded with calm calculation. Workers were retrained, contracts restructured, and communities found ways to keep their economies alive. While other nations faced closures and mass layoffs, Canada seemed oddly resilient, almost prepared for the blow. How did a country facing the same global pressures manage to hold steady while others faltered? The answer reveals something deeper about Canada's economic strategy: the tariff storm. The trouble didn't begin in Canada. It began in Washington, when the Trump administration imposed a 25% tariff on vehicles built in Canada. The impact hit fast. Costs surged, supply chains strained, and the math suddenly didn't add up for automakers dependent on seamless cross-border trade. GM's internal reports told the story clearly: over $1 billion in tariff costs in just one quarter, with projected annual losses climbing toward $5 billion. The BrightDrop plant became one of the casualties of decisions no one wanted to make. Yet while the U.S. market staggered, something very different happened north of the border. The shock absorber economy. Canada's response was calculated, almost surgical. Instead of waiting for panic to spread, Ottawa moved quickly, with relief programs rolling out within weeks, tax credits, supply chain grants, and local support funds designed to keep the system steady. The government didn't try to match Washington's aggression with retaliation. It focused on stability, and that calm, deliberate approach began to separate Canada from its neighbors. While American factories saw disruptions ripple through production lines, Canadian operations stayed surprisingly balanced. This wasn't luck. Between 2020 and 2024, Canada attracted more than $46 billion in EV-related investments, supported by over $52 billion in public incentives, the highest in the G7 relative to GDP. Within that framework sat several key mechanisms: a $5 billion strategic response fund for tariff-affected companies, a regional manufacturing stabilization program that doubled from $450 million to $1 billion, a $450 million retraining initiative aimed at helping 50,000 workers transition into EV and battery-related jobs. Together, they formed a safety net that kept industries from collapsing under pressure. The outcome wasn't only economic stability, it was trust. Workers and companies began to see government policy not as distant bureaucracy, but as a living system that moved alongside them, turning winter into advantage. What unfolded in Ontario wasn't only about tariffs, it was also a lesson in adaptation shaped by Canada's harsh realities. Electric vehicles face unique challenges in northern climates, where sub-zero degree temperatures dramatically reduce battery range and efficiency. Research by the Canadian Automobile Association found that in temperatures between -7 degrees Celsius and -15 degrees Celsius, EV driving range can drop anywhere from 14% to 39%. For a delivery van like BrightDrop, that meant missed targets and mounting operational issues during winter months. Nearly 62% of EV owners report noticeable performance drops in cold weather. Yet instead of treating the cold as a limitation, Canada treated it as an engineering problem waiting to be solved. Across Ontario, startups began experimenting with cold-resistant battery technology. Research labs partnered with universities, while logistics companies like Purolator and Canada Post started transitioning toward hybrid and hydrogen-powered fleets to maintain year-round reliability. What started as a technological setback evolved into a catalyst for innovation. The same climate that once slowed Canada's electric ambitions was now accelerating its next generation of breakthroughs.
The Made in Canada ecosystem. Meanwhile, across the border, General Motors faced mounting pressure. The company absorbed roughly $4.5 billion in additional tariff costs and was forced to spend another $4 billion reorganizing supply chains and navigating domestic political barriers. What had once been the emblem of American industrial might was now caught in a policy storm. Analysts began describing Canada as GM's stability zone, a market where operations could continue with fewer disruptions, supported by consistent energy prices, predictable policies, and lower logistics expenses. This stability created a ripple effect across Ontario. Large-scale projects like Volkswagen's St. Thomas battery facility and Stellantis CoGES's massive Windsor plant formed a dense ecosystem of suppliers and skilled labor. The region was quickly becoming a manufacturing hub that contrasted sharply with the volatility south of the border. Canada used the bright drop shutdown as a moment of clarity, not collapse. It forced policymakers and executives to confront the risk of relying too heavily on a single market. The lesson was clear. Dependence on U.S. demand could no longer define Canada's industrial future. That realization gave rise to an ambitious new goal: to build a self-contained, made-in-Canada EV ecosystem. From mining to manufacturing, the country began constructing an interconnected value chain that stretched from the mineral-rich north to the export-ready ports of the Atlantic. Nickel, lithium, and cobalt, resources once shipped abroad for refinement, were now being processed domestically to feed the national EV network. By keeping extraction, processing, and production within its borders, Canada reduced vulnerability while maximizing long-term control over its own resources. Public investment in this transition surpassed private spending by nearly 14%, signaling a strategic shift toward independence rather than foreign dependency.
Beyond North America, cities like Windsor, St. Thomas, and Alliston, once known mainly for assembly line production, began evolving into centers for materials science, battery research, and high-tech innovation. Universities and startups worked hand in hand with multinational corporations, forming clusters of expertise that strengthened the region's industrial fabric. Beyond North America, Canada's industrial ambitions stretched eastward. Partnerships with the European Union opened new opportunities for export, particularly in green trade and carbon-neutral battery supply. Under these frameworks, Canada positioned itself to deliver transparent, low-emission supply chains, an appealing offer for European markets increasingly focused on sustainability and traceability. This eastward pivot marked a significant shift in Canada's economic geography, allowing it to diversify trade and reduce its historic reliance on the United States. A new industrial geography. That evolution carries deeper implications than trade statistics can show. By focusing on autonomy and long-term resilience, Canada is reshaping the very map of North American manufacturing. The industrial future of the continent may no longer revolve around Detroit or Texas, but around Ontario and Quebec, regions that have turned economic pressure into innovation. It's a story of quiet transformation, one that unfolded not through grand announcements, but through consistent strategic decision-making. The bright drop pause, rather than signaling decline, became a test of endurance. It revealed how effectively a country could absorb shocks without losing its rhythm. Each layer of response, from government policy to private adaptation, showed a level of coordination rarely seen in modern industrial economies. While the U.S. continues to navigate protectionist policies and internal political divides, Canada has maintained a steady course, keeping jobs secure, production stable, and investor confidence strong. The results are becoming harder to ignore. GM continues to operate in Canada, signaling faith in both the workforce and the infrastructure that supports it. Economists now refer to the Canadian model as one of the most effective examples of economic shock absorption in the Western world. The country's approach isn't rooted in luck or temporary advantage. It's built on consistency, cooperation, and foresight, a quiet resilience that may well define the future of North American manufacturing.